it was personally, for me, the very first COVID-19 sample that I picked up. So I had no idea what to expect. So today I'm going to talk about being a volunteer blood biker in the UK. It's not going to be one specific story, it's going to be more an array of stories with little snippets from each one, and I'm going to describe what we do as volunteer blood bikers and what our purpose is and how we try to help the NHS. So to give you a bit of an overview, the structure of blood bikes in the UK is every area has a local group, and that is overseen by a national association body called NAB. NAB keeps an eye on things and they will lobby the government for funding wherever possible, and things like making blood bikes road tax exempt, which came into force last year. NAB is made up of about 3,300 volunteers. There's 32 member groups spanning the whole of the country, and last year they clocked up about 100,000 deliveries done by all of those groups. And the idea that they were set up was to professionalise and make it a standard system across the whole of the country. There are still variations between the different groups. Some groups run on blue lights, other groups don't. But the idea is that the service the NHS receives is the same no matter who is delivering it or picking up the product. The concept of blood bikes was founded back in the 1960s by a lady called Margaret in London, and she set up a group that took phone calls from hospitals and moved blood products from one place to another on a motorcycle. Back then, everyone was a volunteer, just like today. So my journey began back in 2015 when I joined a charity in London called Serve SSL, or Serve Surrey and South London. And we predominantly looked after hospitals and their requirements in the London and Surrey area, but sometimes were sent further afield wherever needs be. Our adjoining groups relied on us quite a lot for picking up collections from a central location, so one of the big hospitals in central London, taking them out to a meeting point, and we would then distribute them out to the local groups. So we would meet up with the likes of Kent blood bikes, and they would take all the blood requirements to their hospitals. This meant that some nights we were piling in 10, 15, 20 boxes of blood into a response car and taking them down to the meeting point. Now, this was a procedure that we had set up every single night. It was done at 10 o'clock, and we'd pick up from the hospital, and at 10:30 we would hand over to a variety of different groups, some going onto bikes, some going into other cars, and I'm sure that the petrol station forecourt where we used to do the handover absolutely loved us, because we used to use the coffee machine a lot. Moving forward from that, I moved up to Nottingham in 2017, and I joined Nottingham Blood Bikes. The real difference between Nottingham and London were, in London we were able to use our own bikes, and in Nottingham we use fleet vehicles only, which means we used a fully liveried up vehicle, looked after by the charity, owned by the charity and insured by the charity. This can be anything from a Yamaha FJR 1300 to a Toyota RAV4 as one of our cars. The work that we do up in Nottingham on a day-to-day basis can range from moving a box of blood from one hospital to another as an urgent requirement, to heel prick samples from a Nottingham hospital up to a children's hospital in another region, all the way up to collecting breast milk from mothers who have recently had a child, but they wish to donate their breast milk to the hospital. And it's when blood biking gets down to a real personal level. You will arrive at the person's house, knock on the door, you'll have a big freezer box, and then be handed anything from 20 to 50 samples of breast milk that you then put in the car and get over to one of the children's hospitals to get that booked in and put in the freezer straight away. And that breast milk is then used for, generally speaking, for premature babies whose parents aren't able to express breast milk, or babies who have unfortunately lost their mother. One of my biggest points to remember happened last year. So we were at the beginning of April, 2nd of April it was, and the COVID pandemic had taken over the UK. There was lots of stress and strain on the NHS. We were in full national lockdown, so everyone was off work and furloughed, and I figured there's got to be something I can do with my time. So I looked on our calendar that we use for volunteering, and I booked myself out for 2 weeks in one of our blood cars. And I remember it, right? It was our RAV4, and I always like driving the RAV4 because it's very comfy, it's got heated seats. And I got a call from our controller, who is also a volunteer, and she requested that I went up to a hospital that's sort of north of the county to pick up 2 samples to take to one of the major hospitals in the west of the county. And I inquired as to what the samples were, and she said to me that it was 2 COVID-19 samples. And these were one of the first COVID-19 samples that we had to move. And it was personally, for me, the very first COVID-19 sample that I picked up. So I had no idea what to expect. So I arrived at this hospital, and it was the first time I'd been at this hospital, and had to be guided by the security guard where to go, because obviously the hospital's on lockdown, they don't have people wandering around. Very specific reason you've got to be there. And went to the ward, picked up the samples, and was handed 2 boxes with COVID-19 in a big luminous pink label stuck on them. Got them back to the car, and proceeded to go over to the delivery hospital. So while I was driving along, I was listening to LBC, and it was the James O'Brien Hour, which is always a pleasure to listen to. And he was asking for stories as to what people were doing in the NHS and how key workers were helping the country with the pandemic. And I decided to snap a quick picture of the samples that were on my back seat, obviously making sure that any patient details were covered up, and tweeted it back to him, to which I got a mention, which hopefully we can play now.
Leading Britain's conversation, LBC, with James O'Brien.
17 minutes after 10. What is it like on the front line? Our weekly expressions of sympathy and gratitude are, profoundly sincere, but they're not built perhaps upon as much knowledge as they could be. And I want answers to this question from all corners of the health service and of course the attendant services as well. Gazza is bombing around the place on his bike at the moment, moving samples for the NHS. He volunteers for the Nottingham blood bikes. Normally dealing with bloods and similar, boxes of blood even, but he's sent me a picture of one of the things he's currently responsible for transporting, and bright pink with the big triangle exclamation mark, COVID-19, sample for analysis. It's all changed.
So it was really nice to get some recognition from someone as famous as James O'Brien, because we all go out there when we volunteer, and we'll move a product from one place to another, and we never get the backstory. So I moved them 2 COVID samples, but we never find out, did my actions actually benefit someone? Did it save a life? We know that we're saving the NHS money, because if I hadn't done it, or one of us hadn't volunteered to go and do it, they would have used a taxi, which would have cost money, or an ambulance or a police car that would have then taken a resource away from the front line. So we know we're having an effect and taking some burden off of the NHS by doing that. So there's loads of stories I could tell you about cold nights and being woken up at 2 a.m. in the middle of winter and being asked to go and move a product. And I think I'll probably come back and tell you a few more of those stories another day. But it's worth mentioning that there's plenty of blood bank groups across the country, and all of them are always looking for new volunteers. There's always a variety of roles to play. So if you don't ride a bike, there's still something for you to do. If you don't drive a car, there's still something for you to do. Most blood groups need riders, drivers, controllers and fundraisers. So even if you can't do anything, you can still answer a phone. Your blood group locally will be able to help you and support you and train you in a way that you'll be able to operate a shift or half a shift in controlling your group and your riders that you've got on duty that night. What I will do, in the description below, I'll include a link to the National Association of Blood Bikes website where you can find out where your nearest group is and see what their recruitment process is and what they're in desperate need of, and maybe you could help out. Also worth mentioning is the Ride for Life book, which is available on Amazon and eBay and stuff like that. It's essentially a story of blood bikers in the Freewheelers Emergency Volunteers group. I'll include a link as well below. Anyone that's interested in blood bikes, it's a very, very good read, and I've read it back to back probably 5 or 6 times. And the best thing about it is all of the money goes into the Freewheelers charity fund. They make no profit from it, and I'm not affiliated with it whatsoever. So if you've liked listening to this video, let me know, and I could potentially come and tell a few more stories of cold nights and riding the bike in winter. And if people would like or would find it interesting, I may take the camera on a night out while I'm volunteering as a blood biker. If you really want to get to grips and see how it goes down, let me know. Hey guys, if you're enjoying this video, why not hit the subscribe button and then the bell icon to get notified of the latest videos and exclusive content from our channel.